Hello and welcome back to another episode of Real Talk with Lou. I am Lucretia and thanks guys for tuning back in. I'm going to jump right into this week's episode. Let me just start off by saying thank you guys all for your support, your continued support, your continued listenership. Last week's episode was co-hosted by my son Javian. He wants to tell all the listeners thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for sending your feedback. And he said he definitely will be back. So last week he opened up a little bit about puberty. That's was the topic that he wanted to talk about, and he'll be back and he's gonna expand on some of the things that he's going through being a preteen and going through puberty, going to school, some of the struggles that he's facing at school. And yeah, he said he's definitely going to be back, and I can't wait to hear what he has to say and to share with you guys. So let's get right into it. This week's episode is kind of a heavy topic. I want to just take it back a little bit. Monday was the memorial service for Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gigi Bryant. I did get a chance to watch the memorial service, and it was a beautiful service. His wife Vanessa did an amazing job at eulogizing her daughter and her husband. And I have to say, as a mother, just thinking about it and, seeing all of the stuff on social media, like every time I see, clips of her speech talking about, God having to take, her husband and her daughter because they couldn't, live without each other. It honestly is it's heartbreaking, but it's also comforting to know that, she has a silver lining. She knew that they loved each other so much. Not to say that he didn't love his other daughters, not to say that he didn't love his wife, but, they shared a special bond, and, she knows that they're in heaven, and she's holding on to that and being strong for her 3 daughters, for her family. And she has to be strong for herself, because at the end of the day she is a mother, and she does have, she still has big shoes to fill, being now a single mother, a widowed mother. She has to fill the void of not having, her husband there to be a father to her 3 kids. She has to be that mom to support her kids, grieve the loss of their father and their sister. And at the same time, she also has to grieve the loss of her husband and her daughter. So yeah, it was very touching. It was very beautifully done. All of the speakers that had something to say about Kobe and Gigi, their speeches are really touching, and you could tell that they were extremely loved. They were extremely loved. Kobe was a worldwide icon, an iconic figure, not just in basketball, but in the work that he did with children, the work that he was doing for women's basketball. Like, honestly, his accolades go beyond the basketball court, and he will always be remembered. His daughter will always be remembered, and I know his wife will, carry on his legacy and make sure that, the legacy of Kobe Bryant and her daughter never dies, right? So I just want to say again, my heart goes out to her. My prayers are with her and her family, her daughters, all the families of the victims of that plane crash. All we can do is pray for them, pray that God gives them strength, and that, they just feel the love of everyone that is praying for them. and that they, take it day by day. And that's all you can do in times like this. Take each day one step at a time. It's gonna be a very long road to grieving and recovery from this tragedy, but I know with the love and strength of God, with their faith, they will get through it. And it's something that we should all hold on to. It's something that we should all reflect on. I definitely have done a lot of reflecting over the last few weeks, and not just about the loss of Kobe and this great tragedy, but just reflecting on how I spend every day of my life, and making every day and every moment count. You know what I mean? Because we never know when our time is going to be up. We never know when our last breath, we're going to take our last breath. Our time here is only temporary. And in tragic moments like this, when it's unexpected, especially when we're dealing with children and people that we believe that hadn't accomplished everything they had to accomplish, it always takes you back and gives you a moment to think, like, how are we spending our days? How are we cherishing our time here on earth? And are we making it worth our while? I just believe that we are all put here for a purpose, and we genuinely have to strive to seek that purpose and fulfill that purpose before our time is called, because tomorrow is not promised to anybody, and we see how real that is every day. So, that was just a little, side note to what I wanted to talk to you guys about today. Kind of related, but also something that I have been reflecting on a lot lately, especially going through therapy. Therapy has been a very fulfilling experience for me. It's been very freeing, very eye-opening from the perspective of, like, I've been able to see things about myself that I've never tried to look at. I've been able to unpack things that I've never thought to attempt to unpack. One of the areas of my self-healing, self-care process is dealing with issues in my life that I've never dealt with. I tend to, when I come upon issues that I can't solve or I don't know how to solve, I tend to just put them on the back burner and keep it moving. That's been my coping mechanism for most of my life. One of the biggest things that I've never actually dealt with was the loss of my mom. And it's something that I've never talked about to anybody really until now. I've touched on it in therapy. My therapist has asked me questions, the typical questions: how did you feel? What did you do? Stuff like that. And to be honest, I don't know how I felt. I didn't really do anything in terms of grieving the loss of my mom. I was, very young. I lost my mom at 12 years old, when I was 12 years old. And she was very young, 35. So very unexpected, very, very traumatic. I believe, looking back, I definitely dealt with depression. But at the same time, I was able to cope very well in the eyes of everybody looking at me. In the beginning, yes, it was very, very difficult for me to get through my days. But I did get through them. I got through them. I'd get up every morning, cry, wash my face, go to school, and act as if nothing happened for a very long time. I basically put that in the back of my mind and I kept it moving. People have asked me throughout my life, how did I deal with losing my mom at such a young age? And that's literally how I dealt with it. I put it at the back of my mind. I didn't think about it. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to deal with it. And it's now taking a toll on me. I feel like I'm experiencing things in my life that I would have loved to have my mom around to experience with me. And it's really hard going through, certain things as a woman and not have your mom there. So yeah, it's something that I know I have to eventually deal with. I think talking about it helps a lot. Talking about it helps a lot. Reflecting helps a lot. I definitely think that this is a major step for me in terms of my healing process. And yeah, I definitely am making it a priority in terms of what I'm doing in therapy, like getting through and unpacking the root causes of a lot of my issues. It really stems back to this moment in my life that I had never really had the desire or chance to deal with. So yeah, I just wanna talk about a couple things in terms of dealing with loss, going through therapy, doing research, podcasting. I now feel like I'm Googling everything. So I definitely did a little bit of research on the grieving process, stages of grief and loss, and what I came across was the 5 stages of grief and loss. I'm just gonna go through them really quickly and just talk about my experience. Hopefully, if any one of you are going through dealing with a loss, or grieving the loss of a loved one, a friend, anybody, if you're grieving the loss of Kobe Bryant, because to be real, a handful of people knew Kobe in a very intimate and personal level outside of his family, right? But Kobe touched the lives of so many people around the world. And it's honestly a devastating loss for so many people. If you're a basketball fan, and you grew up in the Kobe era, this is a major loss. There are grown men that, learned how to play basketball because of watching Kobe. So this is, a piece of their childhood gone. So it's definitely a time where they be going through, the grieving process. You're grieving the loss of somebody that you idolized. You're grieving the loss of somebody that you looked up to. Maybe Kobe was your role model because you didn't have a father figure, but that was, who you looked up to as your superhero. So it's even if you're grieving the loss of somebody that you've never seen or touched, there's still a process that you have to go through. So yeah, 5 stages of grief and loss. And I did a lot of Googling. There are different variations of this, but this one seemed the most relative to my experience. So the first stage is denial and isolation. Denial and isolation, I guess the immediate shock of hearing and knowing that somebody that you loved is gone, right? you don't want to accept that. You don't want to accept that. And, you know, a lot of people, including myself, tend to shut down. When I got the news that my mom passed, I didn't even want to hear it. I didn't want to believe it because it seemed so unreal. And like I said, I put it in the back of my mind. I didn't talk to anybody about it. I didn't want to hear about it for a very long time. And that's kind of the way I isolated my thoughts. I didn't necessarily isolate myself, but I definitely isolated my thoughts, my emotions, away from dealing with that. And isolation was my form of denial. I guess when I put it at the back of my mind and I didn't have to address it, that was me not accepting it. So yeah, second stage of grief and loss is anger. And I don't know if I necessarily felt angry. Because I didn't really take the opportunity to process it in the beginning, I don't think I was angry. Definitely sad. There are definitely moments now in my life where I feel like, like I said, like I wish my mom was here when I had my kids. I wish my mom was here when, I started dating, and, I wish she was here to help me deal with relationship problems, because, a lot of how we react to situations, we react based on how, based on the things that happened in our past. Our past molds us, and based on how you're molded, it determines how you react to certain situations. So I definitely wish that I had my mom here to guide me through some of, these hurdles in life that, sometimes only a mother can guide their child. So I don't necessarily feel like I was angry, but I definitely felt throughout my life since I lost my mom, there were definitely emotions that, were definitely not happy emotions, definitely not content emotions. And yeah, I'm dealing with that a lot more now. I'm in my 30s, so I feel like things that I deal with now, with my kids, with, having a spouse and dealing with relationship issues, there are some things that you just want to call your mom and ask your mom how you would deal with these things, and I don't necessarily have that. So, there's a sadness and an emptiness there. There's definitely a void. So I don't know if it's anger, but it's definitely a void that I have that hasn't really been filled. Stage 3 of grief and loss is bargaining. I guess bargaining would be, wishing that there were some other way instead of having to bear the loss of your loved one. Again, I don't know if I really dealt with this at 12 years old. I don't know what I could have, bargained to have taken away instead of my mom, right? At 12, I don't think a lot of 12-year-olds would say, take me, God, and bring back my mom. Not to say that I wouldn't want to trade the world to have one more day with my mom. I definitely would trade, my entire life just to have one more day with my mom. Now, at that age, I just wanted my mom back. I don't think I was, I had the capacity to say what I would give up to have her back, but I definitely just wanted my mom back, even for just one more moment. Stage 4 is depression. Depression, I definitely know that I've dealt with that throughout the years, in different forms and at different times. I definitely feel like now more than ever, it's definitely a challenge and a battle. I try not to let myself slip too much, where I fall into that, in that state of despair and, just that state of not caring about anything. I try really hard not to fall into that anymore. There was a time in my late teens, early 20s where, I was really, really, really dealing with depression. And I didn't talk to anybody about it. I didn't seek counseling. I didn't seek therapy. I didn't do anything. I just stayed to myself, put a smile on every day, got up, went to school, went to work, and kept it moving. And that is not the healthy thing to do. It definitely is not. Going through traumas, you need to definitely talk to somebody about it, because not talking can be detrimental to yourself. People go crazy not talking about the things that are bothering them. So yeah, I definitely know that I was battling depression for a lot of years since my mom died. It's gotten a lot better with, consistently going to my therapist, with, being more open with people and expressing my feelings a little bit more. I think I can do better in that area than I do now. And I do need to make time to be consistent with therapy and be consistent with, talking to those that genuinely love me and care for me. The 5th stage of the grieving process is acceptance. A lot of people don't get here when grieving. It took me a very, very, very long time to gain some ounce of acceptance when it comes to the loss of my mom. Like, I understand, we don't have forever. I understand that our time here is only temporal. And I understand that, loss is a natural part of life that we're all going to experience one day. Some sooner than others, some later than others. But loss is loss, especially when, it's your mother, your father, your child. It doesn't matter how old they are. They still experience the same hurt. I accept it. I accept that, she's gone. She's definitely not coming back. I accept that the memories I had of her are only good memories. My mom was not on this earth for a very long time, and I may not have had an extensive relationship with her, but I know that the encounters I did have with her were encounters of love and happiness, and I'll always keep those memories with me. So yeah, that's a little bit of me opening up about this topic on grief and loss. I hope that anybody dealing with the loss of a loved one, the loss of a friend, a coworker, whoever it may be, I hope that this helps you. Going through the grieving process is not easy, and it also takes time. I encourage you, if you are dealing with loss, if you are dealing with any traumatic situation, that you find somebody that you can trust. You can find somebody that won't spill the beans to somebody else, but find somebody that you trust, that you can talk openly with, and that will, give you good guidance. I encourage you to find that person, and definitely don't keep things bottled up. Don't keep things bottled in. If something's bothering you, don't wait till next week to talk about it. Let's talk about it today, because it could be an issue as small as, take your socks out. But you're not talking, and then the issue becomes even bigger and bigger and bigger. So yeah, definitely talk to your kids, talk to your loved ones, hug them, let them know how much they mean to you, because they can walk out this door and not come back. I hope that this episode helps out somebody. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at realtalkwithlou@gmail.com. I will do my best to respond to your answers either on the podcast or via DM or email reply. Thank you guys again so much for sticking with us. Have yourself a blessed night, and I will be back next week.